John, thank you so much for joining me on the Teachers Podcast.
No, it's a pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. I was just really excited to get you on. So a few weeks ago, obviously we had Lee Parkinson from Mr. PICT, and it was lad. Lee that suggested that you come on the podcast because you know so much about reading and you're such an experienced author in education materials. So I'm just really excited that you're here and you're
I'm excited to be here as well. So it's always good to have a good conversation about reading and books and learning. So that if you're passionate about learning, it's always going to be an interesting conversation to have. So that's nice.
Thank you. So I'm really looking forward to it because obviously we only had a brief chat. So I feel like some of the things I'm going to be finding out for the first time as well. Normally I have a bit more of an idea. So going to surprise me, and I've got my notes ready and I'm really excited.
Brilliant.
So I always ask this question first because I want to make sure that everybody who's listening, who's never heard of John Merrow before, knows why they should listen to you and what your experience is. So can you tell us your journey into teaching and throughout teaching and possibly, sometimes I say and why you left, and then some people say I haven't left, I'm still in teaching, so that.
Yeah, just me how I got here today.
And
not using sat nav. Right, okay, so
you can tell me about that if you want, but
no, basically I've always wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to be a teacher and a writer. So so qualified in 97, went from my A-levels, did a Bachelor of Education BEd. 97 I qualified, so that seems such a long time ago. Worked in a regular school, but with special needs children with lots of linguistic problems and stuff. And then from that school, loved that school, St Paul's, beautiful school. It was great experience for integration. So it was all about integrating and everyone learning from each other's experiences. Beautiful. And I moved from that school after the Oldham riots. We ended up moving to a school right in the centre that was at the time 100% Bangladeshi. Wow. So lots of second language, all second language learners. And at first I was put in charge of English. By Christmas, I was twitching, going, I don't think I can do this. And so what we did, we went to the head and we split it. We split it into, and I always advise when I go to schools now, it's such a big and beautiful subject, really. So we split it into writing, reading and speech and language.
And that makes so much sense as well, because in some of the bigger schools you do have a couple of people on PE, don't you?
Well, we were a huge school. We were like 450 plus. Wow. We were big, and so it just liberated everything. It was really good. We come together once a term as a team, and then we always brought in another subject, so another subject leader. So because then it was everyone's responsibility to teach English, and that was a thread that went through. But because I was liberated and just focused on reading, I looked at guided reading, the library, reading for pleasure, story time, the whole shebang. So yeah, that was good. And we just, after 3 years of hard slog, and it was hard slog, we went from rock bottom to soaring high, and and then hop, skip and a jump later, I got the opportunity to work independently, really. And now my job is to go around the UK, looking at schools, working with schools and head teachers and so forth. Just looking at reading and reading into a writing approach and all those things. So it's a wonderful job, and it's not just schools that are struggling, although a lot of the time it is. It's also those outstanding schools, although I don't like to use that term, that want to progress, that never sit on the laurels. That I don't tend to work in a lot of middle of the road schools that just sit back and think, yeah, we're okay. It's those two ends, and it's a great opportunity and experience for me to do that. A privilege, really. A privilege.
And you're so passionate about it as well.
I love it. I love
my
job.
I feel myself, I'm just looking at you so much because you're just so
It's all about,
into it.
it's about communicating with people. And it's like when we talk about when we split it in from reading, writing and speech and language. And a lot of this interview or conversation will be to do with speech and language because I'm partially deaf.
Okay.
So I went to speech therapy until till all the way through primary. And sometimes if you find it hard to articulate your thoughts, it's difficult. Your understanding may be there, but if you can't articulate it, it's difficult. Speaking and listening, and I say this so many times, speaking and listening is not the poor cousin to reading and writing. So to be able to communicate verbally, that's where you can really get your energy that will lead you into better reading and writing. So yeah, it's good.
Yeah, thank you. And I mean, obviously we had a conversation earlier, and I was mentioning about my daughter, and she just, I can tell already that I think she's going to like writing because she just picks up the words and uses them back in context all the time.
Yeah.
I think you're 3, why are you using those words?
Yeah, it's interesting, really.
It's like a passion.
It's one. Well, I know one of the questions later on might be to do with boys and girls. Those who communicate quicker and have a richer language and are surrounded and immersed in a rich language, linguistic environment will make better progress. But it's also why children who are partially, with deaf or hard of hearing, or they may even have, like, for example, if you're in reception class, glue ear.
Yes.
They're just full of snots. But that
snot. He says snot, just in case
yeah,
you didn't know.
snot. So, but it means that their hearing will. So the phonics will. Lots of things.
You can see it, can't you? Because you have to be able to hear.
Yeah.
For that to happen, absolutely. Yeah, thank you. That's just really insightful. Okay, so when we had the phone call before, you talked about teachers needing to love reading, reading, and I love that because I did an interview with Alison Phillipson, and she was talking about writing, and she was talking about whether teachers are natural writers or not, and the need to find their love for writing, and it's the same thing. I can see why that's so important.
And it's important. It's difficult, that one as well, because not everyone is a natural reader.
No.
You might be able to read, but the joy that you get through reading is very different, and the types of books that you enjoy reading, it will be differ from person to person, and just having the time to enjoy.
And most teachers don't have the time to enjoy reading,
it
which
is
difficult.
I mean, I really read for pleasure during the holidays and going away on holidays. I was just saying, weren't I? If I go on holiday without John Grisham, I feel like I'm a bit bereft and I've not had a good holiday. But again, it's finding that time but passing on your passion for the written word is so important. It's a fundamental.
So just back to that then. So because teachers do need to sort of find their love of reading if they have it. Have you come across any books that you've really loved over the summer?
I have, and I got you one, didn't I? I brought it today. Here it is, wrapped up, because you was like on the phone. She's like, tell me what is it? Come on, I'm really excited now. And
it's a surprise.
But can you see, before you've even opened this, you've got an enthusiasm for this book?
Yeah, I do.
Why?
Because I don't know what it is, and now I'm already thinking maybe I should do that Advent book thing for my daughter.
But because I was passionate about it on the phone, and because this book is one of the best books I have read in the last 2 years. It's absolutely blown me away, this book. The writing, the messages, the topic, the issues, the illustrations. So there you go.
I feel like I should give you a job in marketing.
No, honestly, I think you. This book, I can't tell you how powerful this book is. I'll read you something from it when you've seen it.
Thank you. Right, I'm opening in this book now. If you listen on the podcast, so you can hear me. Are you all excited?
It's like Christmas, isn't it? I even got a good.
Oh, it's called Wisp: A Story of Hope. Can you see that? I'm just gonna show you there.
Yeah. But interesting, isn't it? Can you see that? What's it say?
Amnesty Clip Honour?
Yeah, so it's a book that's been honoured by Amnesty International, and it tells the story of refugees and those who are, for whatever reason, have been misplaced, and they're in a very dire situation, but there's always hope. And
that's what you need to carry on.
Yeah, and we were talking about stories and the importance of stories. Everyone wants to share stories, even if they can't read. They will tell you stories, and stories are what bind us together as a community and unify us as a humanity. So I just thought I'd share one little bit of this book, just because look at that, it's a picture. I don't know if you can see that. Can we see that? Incredible. So the wisp comes, it says, I'll share this with you. It says, when the next wisp flew in on the evening wind, Idris knew what to do. He let himself be bustled past and over and along until the wisp found who it was seeking. The woman looked at Idris, a sad etched deep in her face. She held the wisp to her ear. A light flickered softly in her eyes. Once, she whispered, and the wisp quivered with delight. The memories spun from the woman's fingers and rippled through the air. A forest blossomed from the dirt and pulled free a storm. The people stopped. They smiled, and together they watched as a thunder of colours rained down from the sky. And when the woman's fingers stilled, there was just a splash of happy in her words, and the sad on her face was not as deep as before. And it's about all these different characters and different men and women and elderly and fishermen and everyone, that they come alive when they tell their story. And that story is what helps them have that hope of a better future for the children. It's such a powerful message, and truly beautifully illustrated. It's if you read that book back from cover to cover, you will have tears in your eye at the end. And that, for me, when a book or a story or a piece of text, don't have to be in a book, touches the heart as well as the head, that's when you get true understanding. And for me, that's the whole ethos of what I'm about. It's not, when you talk about comprehension, because that's what I do. I go into schools to try and help develop a school ethos of reading and develop and improve their comprehension skills and results. It's not just about the head. It's about the heart. And if you can love reading, that reading for pleasure, and love making those connections with the text, that's when you'll fall in love with books, and that's when so going back to getting teachers to be passionate about, find the book. Don't let anyone tell you which book to do at story time. You choose the book that you do at the book, and pass on your passion, and you'll never go wrong.
I love that, because I think if I lent towards one subject, it's not maths, it's English, and because in English with the stories, it's the whole world. It's not just words, is it? You're not learning when it's maths, you're learning about numbers and you're learning about mathematics. But in English, it can be anything. It can be history, it can be geography, and it could be in a story way. And you just learn so much, and it's that connection, like.
And it's why story time is fundamentally important. It's essential. You're not teaching you might be teaching through books, through text, through poetry in English as a subject. Story time's not that. You feel safe. You're sharing your passion for that story. So we all remember story time, whether it be at our home, being read to by your mum and dad. Or getting a present from going to the library. Well, what if you don't get books as presents? What if you're never a member of the library? What if you never read to it at bedtime because your dad can't read? They have to have that opportunity. So schools might be the only time that they have access to that opportunity. So story time. And it has to be timetabled, in my opinion, because it has to be. it can't fade out. It can't be pushed to one side because we've just run out of time. Everyone has to, it has to be a whole school approach, because it's 9 times out of 10 when a school's struggling, it's the ethos. Are we a reading school?
Yeah.
That ethos of that readability and that love of rich literature, the powerful stories, and that story time. You just can't. Those are the memories. It's why we do read, write, perform with Lee, because it's the memories that they'll take with them that will when they're picking their children up, when they're old people and they're picking their own children up or their grandchildren up, that you want them to remember you as a teacher that fostered that love of learning and that fostered those beautiful books. Those are the treasures they'll take away. They won't take away what fronted adverbial is. No. They won't. They will not remember that. It's why year 7 is so problematic, because they've lost all that. Yeah. It's why the heart's so important. So stories like that touch you, that emote you, that make you passionate and can show you're a passionate reader. Those are the conversations and the engagement that you want with children.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, because I've got a performing arts background, and one thing I say, if people ask me if I go to watch a film or something, I don't like watching a film unless I'm going to be moved by it. So if I'm not scared by it, that's not that I like thrillers, by the way, but if I'm not scared by it, or if I'm not in tears by it, or if I'm not, laughing a lot from it, then I don't want to watch it, because if I'm not emotionally moved, it was a waste of money. And it's the same with the book, isn't it, really? What's the point in reading it unless you're actually spurred into action of the mind?
It's just and stirs the heart. It's so important. It's like when should I go on to it's like when you're reading one-to-one with a child. A lot of the time, say at home we read with our own children or our nephews and nieces or whoever, we're sharing those stories all the time, and that's an emotional bond. So when you're in school, say you've not got those opportunities at home, and you're reading one-to-one with a child, usually it's with teaching assistants, isn't it? Because they're like, come on, we've got to get through. And sometimes it's like a conveyor belt. So they're like, so you'll say, go and get your book, let me listen to you read. And they'll just sit there and you'll watch them, and the children will just be reading their whatever book it is. They've not practiced it, they've not talked about it. So then what do they do? If I said to you, for example, I'm going to ask you to read a passage from here. Should we do, in fact, let's...
I hope I know all the words.
Right, exactly. So, what are you thinking now?
I'm thinking, we're live. What happens if there's a big word I don't know?
Right,
and I'm 35.
Right, so what you've done now, because you've not seen this text, what's your main overarching, aim?
To get all the words right.
Right. So now you've switched into survival mode.
Yes.
So your priority.
It's true, I really have.
Yeah, I'm not going to get you to read. Don't worry. But because you've gone into that, when you read, comprehension goes up to the back seat.
Yeah, I'm glad you did that, because it's made me feel like that.
Yeah, you're on and your priority is to get everything right. So you switch to the mechanics of reading, and that hopefully with your fluency and vocabulary and all that. But comprehension takes a back seat. So here's a little trick, a little tip, because it'll make a huge difference in the class, and it's amazing. And you'll see it within 2 or 3 weeks, in 2 or 3 sessions. Don't do that, because it's putting children on the defensive, and it's not. So if I had a book here, even if it was red level Oxford Reading Tree, the box, who's the better reader in me and you? And if you were the child,
probably still you.
Me? No, the adult. So you read to them. So you read to them, And you can, with your voice, you can bring that text alive.
Yeah.
You can bring it alive. You
model
model the intonation, and you talk. What's more important is you talk about what you've read and the pictures in it. So you have a conversation then, and by that, and that conversation brings comprehension back to the fore. Once you've had that discussion and you've modeled being a passionate reader. Then you say to the child, right, now you know this text and you've listened to me read it. Would you like to read it to me?
Yes.
So straight away, now sometimes they'll go, you ask, John, can you read that to me? And they're like, no, I don't feel like it today. But at least they've listened to a model reader, you've passed on your passion and you've talked about your understanding of the text in a safe way.
Yeah. So would you still do it at their reading level so they can read it back? You wouldn't do a more difficult text?
That's an interesting question, because if it was reading one-to-one, it usually is at their level, isn't it?
Yeah.
So if it's one-to-one, if you're doing it in a group, that would also might be at their level.
Yeah.
If it's a whole class, I don't tend to get children to read out loud in class because it's just
taking away the comprehension again, like you said. It's my turn.
And you're scared. So say you've got 8 kids. We've done it. Say we've got 8 kids in front of us, and you read, and then you're just doing a round robin. Well, what do? I'll tell you what I did as a kid. I'd be like, right, I hope it's not like random, because then I'm thinking, oh my goodness.
When is it my turn?
Yeah.
You try to read ahead to see when.
So then I'm thinking, right, hold on, they're going page by page. I'm going 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm the fifth paragraph, right? I'll practice it. I'm not even listening to them.
No.
And once my goes off, that's me done.
Yeah.
Always good to model it yourself. You be the storyteller. You understand the text on an emotional level, so and you'll have the fluency.
Yeah.
There are times when you will need to build in fluency and give them opportunity, but it's always good to get them to model it and then get them to appreciate and apply what they've done to each other first. And then talk about it and share, because it's about, well, you said you've done some work in the theatre and performance. Sometimes you'll hear the term echo. Now, sometimes you've got to be careful with that, because if you echo, it's just some children, they just repeat what you say in the manner that you've said it.
Yeah.
Well, once you get to, especially in Key Stage 2 and beyond, it's not about echoing, because that's my interpretation. Sometimes you want children to read and interpret it in their voice, in their own reading voice. So it's a case of, and that's where another great conversations can happen. So, well, why did you stress that word? Why did you read quick here? I didn't. I put my stress here, and I slowed down here. So, and like actors do with a script, they talk about the text.
Do you know what's really good on that is just to point out that it's not wrong, because obviously as somebody who's done a lot of performing, I used to read that out loud, especially if you're doing a read through, and I used to think, oh, well, when they did that character, they read it differently to me, so I must be wrong. And it's not necessarily that it is. That's good to bring that up. And children, if they're not careful, they know where they are on that ladder. I'm telling you, they do. Call your group Apple Blossom and Cherry Blossom and what you have. I had my nephew. He come to me once and he just go, my brother's like, tell him how you doing. Tell your Uncle John what you're doing for your maths. He goes, oh, I'm in triangle group for maths. And then when everyone had gone, he just whispered to me, he goes, but I'm only in Sparrows for writing. I didn't know what the groups were called, but he knew, even in reception, he knew that Sparrows were poor. Yeah. But he also knew that triangles were up there. So sometimes sometimes it's a bit, children will think, oh, he or she's in a bit higher group than me. So this is the way that they've read it, must be better than me. They're better than me, so they must be right. It's not about that at all. Not about that at all. But I even think adults still think that as well.
So we said that it wasn't about that. And it's good in a way, because you'll find that some children who find reading difficult because they've still got issues with the mechanics of reading or are not confident readers, they can still contribute a lot verbally, and they bring a lot to the table. So it's again, it's inclusive. It's really interesting.
And sometimes you think as well, some of the children, and this is not always the case, but say there's a fly
It's a
there.
fly. No flies on me. Go on.
But my sort of thinking about my experience, sometimes some of the children that don't have as rich a vocabulary or are not as good at reading, sometimes in some ways have got more life experience, and and in that way they might be able to bring more to the comprehension side, even though they might not be able to access the text.
I was in a school about 18 months ago, and it was interesting because the head teacher and all the teachers were there, and the deputy and everything, and they wanted me to demonstrate a lesson. And one of the, so it's basically, when I do that, I always say, well, don't give me your best, I'll give you a false reading. Give me your bog standard, give me 60 bog standard learners. And so he did that. It was a year 5 class. So the year 5 group, and the text was called The Magpie Girl. It's in Reading Explorers. So The Magpie Girl is set where basically it's November, it's starting to rain, it's cold, and the girl's in the cupboard. She's poor. She's and everyone's going home to a nice warm home, nice food, and she spots a market stall over the cobbles, and the apples look red like rubies. So because she's what a magpie is famous for.
Stealing things
that are shiny, and and it starts off with a poem. One for sorrow, 2 for joy, 3 for a girl, 4 for a boy, 5 for silver, 6 for gold, 7 for a secret never to be told. So the story starts, and she has to but she's a good girl, so she has to convince herself to steal this apple. So it's like, it's only one apple. So posh woman comes, she's from one thing that happens and another. The stall holder and her she goes to buy 6 apples, this posh woman. They nudge, the shilling drops on the floor, they both go to get it. That's her opportunity. So she steals another apple. She steals the apple, the magpie girl. Well, how many apples is that? 6 and 1, 7. So she's stolen the 7th apple. So that's her secret, isn't it? And it ends, but when she bites into it, it don't taste sweet. She don't like the taste. And it ends with the sentence, life was teaching her the hard way that life was not as things were not as black and white as they should be. Quite a deep message, that, really. Now, interesting, the head teacher had put in 2 extra children in that group, but hadn't told me. One was a year 6 girl who was poor reader, who was not expected to pass, for want of a better word, the SATs, and a year 4 child who was greater depth, and was absolutely brilliant, top of the pecking order, if you like, in that group. And we were talking about this text, and we just taught and engaged with it and chatted about the character and motives for everything. And at the end of the session, they went away into the playground, and it was just a case of, right, what do you learn from watching that? Because that, and the year 6 teacher burst into tears. Because I said that was it. So I said, well, I'll tell you what I've learned. I'll tell you what, that girl there, amazing. She was incredible. She knew she's great at depth. I'm telling you now, she's great at depth, because her understanding of the motives and that child and the character and the situation was incredible. That's when the class teacher burst into tears. And she went, that's what I was thinking. That's exactly what I was thinking, because unbelievable. She says, and she said to me, but if you knew her life, if you knew her life at home, you understand why she could empathise. And it's that, and it's interesting. Don't cry, because
we're both getting a bit emotional here.
But that's why, because that goes back to this book, doesn't it? It goes back to that, and it's interesting because the lad, I said, do you see that lad there? I thought he was poor. He just, he was definitely, you'd have to work on him and do, you know. Now remember, he's great at depth in year 4. Do you know why he was poor? Why do you think it?
Because he didn't comprehend the story in the same way, he couldn't empathise with the characters.
He couldn't. Do you know what? He could not get over the fact that she'd stolen the apple, so she must be bad.
Right.
So it's interesting, isn't it? So that shows you.
It was black and white for him.
Yeah, it was black and white for him, and it's again, when you're teaching children about comprehension, it's not. I use a phrase called, and it's a really important phrase to remember, emotional dexterity. It's that connection with the text on an emotional level. That's what the girl got.
Yeah.
When you connect with the author and the character and the situation, that's when you can empathise and understand. And so that emotional dexterity is so important. That lad was not emotionally developed enough to get to understand that. So again, it's about choosing texts that are right, not just at the physical mechanical stage, but also at the emotional stage. So that they can understand and really understand why the motives of a character is doing something.
And I think
so important.
I like that phrase, emotional dexterity, because I think for me, listening to you talk about it, it just sums up the reason why I would want to read or even watch a film or something. If I don't get that, I don't want to.
Yeah, it's
because
like
I know
looking,
what that feeling is.
Even at looking at a photograph or a still painting, it's that two-way connection. So that's if you're ambidextrous, you can write with both hands, can't you? But that emotional connection. So it's not just what it's not what the text brings to you. It's also what you bring to the text, and it's that two-way connection that allows you to explore the text deeper. And if you want to improve, there are a couple of things to improve inference, but you always have to think it's not just about the text. It's about the whole child.
Yeah.
It's about the whole child. So just if you're wanting to improve inference, you've got to improve the emotional well-being of that child as well, and view education and view reading as a holistic approach. For me, you can't just. Again, it goes back to your ethos. Always goes back to your ethos, because it's not just about teaching children to pass a test, to write or construct an answer that will get 2 or 3 marks. I know we're in a system that we force down that road sometimes, and it's a balancing act. But again, it's about why do we become teachers? Why do we want to? What do we want to give children that when they've left school they will take with them? And it's that attitude to reading for pleasure, and those connections that are just everything.
And that is what you take with you, isn't it? Because when you don't have to read, I mean, obviously you're going to read road signs, you're going to read for life, but you're not going to pick up a book and read if you're not getting that emotional feeling, because what is the point? Well,
that goes down for reading for pleasure. So, but then on the flip side of that is reading for purpose. So if you're reading, I love the Great British Bake Off, me. That's just started this week. But you read a recipe, you're not going to get an emotional connection with 3 eggs and an ounce of flour or what have you. But because it's purposeful, you're reading for purpose. So again, it's my brother, for example. I would say he's not a great reader when it comes to. He would never read poetry. He'd never read a story. But history, you talk about World War II. He's an engineer. He's into all that stuff. Loves it. So factual stuff he finds fascinating to read because he wants to learn more about it. Whereas me, when I'm a writer, it's interesting even with writing. I love to write poetry, and I love to write emotional text, just like the Magpie Girl. When it comes to factual texts, it takes me a lot longer because I'm not as. It's so hard for me to have an emotional connection with fact. maths.
Yeah.
You have to drop in a few things there to try and just think, oh, well, that's a nice play of, put a bit of alliteration in or play with word, sentence structure. But it takes me a lot longer because my passion's not there really. But it's interesting.
Yeah, and they can be difficult reads, can't they?
Yeah.
Where you have to read it a few times. Thank you. That's amazing. I love doing these podcasts because I feel like I pick up so much information, and I know I'm not in the classroom anymore, but it's so useful, especially with my little girl, and I've got another one who's one. But also just passing it on to the team. The team absolutely love listening to these.
Well, it's just sharing experiences. Yeah. I always say when I'm doing my training, there's no one way's the only way. And what might work for one school and what might work for one group of children may not necessarily work. You want a broad and balanced, you want a different. Children need to be exposed to a variety of texts and a variety of opportunities for a variety of reasons and purposes. So, mix it up a bit, mix it up and share and explore.
Thank you. Right, I've got some more questions for you. So, you mentioned before that you taught children with a lot of linguistic needs.
Yeah.
Did you feel that the ways you had to sort of not necessarily change, but adapt what you were doing, do you feel like you brought them across later when you were teaching lots of children with EAL and then after that?
Do you know what? It's interesting because I do a lot of work with intervention, reading intervention, and the more I do it, the more it's not that this. I don't like it when they separate. I think inclusion and integration is everything. It's the pace. So and although children, it's why group work is really good, because if children are only exposed to whole class reading and that's the only experience they ever get, then for those who lack confidence or have certain issues, they drift and the gap gets bigger and bigger because you're only exposed to text at their own age, reading age.
Yeah.
But what if you're great and you're beyond that? You've got to have opportunity to read and access text at your level.
Yeah.
And I do believe that that's a right. Children have the right to be exposed to and look at and explore and discuss text at their level, as well as their age expected and stuff like that. So again, it's a range. So in terms of adapting, a lot of the times, one of the mistakes I made early on in my career, as a just enthusiastic teacher in NQT, I suppose, is I'd just go too fast.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, and because there was a Linda Brotherdale, she's not a teacher now, but she didn't get into teaching until her late 40s. She worked in a factory and she's just a great woman. Loads of life experience. And I tell you what, I learnt loads from her and she had Sid, kept calling me Sid. I'm just like, I'm not called Sid, I'm called John. And she just goes, slow it down. And because if you're not careful, you're that bothered about you teaching the curriculum that you're like, what have I got to do next? What have we got to do next? You can't stop and savour the moment. You can't, and children like that, you've got to, if you just slow down, just chill your beans and just go, right, you know what, we're going to love this. We're going to love this, and you make go slow. This where it's on a 2 weeks next unit, 2 weeks next unit, 2 weeks. Who dictates the pace? The children. Sure, just relax and enjoy it more. And I think with children who struggle or a little bit behind, I think that's the main thing, that they're not separated. But if you slow down and you're inclusive and value speech and language, that's what I learned, especially with the EAL children. They've got so much to offer. It's not a hindrance. My brother's married to a Czech girl, so Isabella, when she was learning English, she had come from a home where there were 2 languages in there. Tell you what, that brain is firing all 4 cylinders. And you'll find if you're in year 1, EAL children will tend to do better in the phonics screening check, just because the brain's amazing. and it's just they'll learn the rules and such forth. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a hindrance. It can be something that can be fantastic. Obviously, with the children who are partially deaf, or they may have been born with a cleft lip or facial disfigurement, that will affect their speech and language. And again, it goes back to if you find it hard to articulate and you struggle to articulate with the mechanics of how you read, how you speak, then that can be quite frustrating. So again, trying to get them to do it quick because you've got 30 minutes and we've got to go, come on. Just slow down
and I guess
break it down.
The whole slowing down fits in as well with allowing, the children who are able to go deeper as well. Pausing it so the children who need it slowing down can get there and everyone else can go deeper. Yeah,
and it's funny really, in terms of the skills, there is a progression of skills, but you'll find that, because some people think, well, inference, pure inference, even deduction, which is an aspect of inference, they think that that's the pinnacle, that's what every child needs. We've got to get them through that inference, get them to do loads of that, bang, bang, bang. But those who are like 99ers, who are just bubbling under where they should be, usually you'll find that their skill set, they struggle with just retrieval and fluency, the vocab. So you may at times need to separate the skill that you're teaching certain groups because you plug in the gap that they need. And retrieval, to retrieve literal information or specific information from a text is not a basic skill, it's a fundamental skill. So if that foundation isn't there, and a lot of 99ers and poorer readers, that foundation is weak. Don't matter what house you try and build after that, it will always be unsteady. So you have to get that solid first.
You have to go back. Right, thank you. Okay, how do you foster a love of language and reading with children that lack confidence or not functional readers?
Again, it goes back to book talk really, and talking and being creative around text. I'm glad you said language as well and not just books, because sometimes text can be a barrier. So again, if in an intervention, if it was reading intervention, so you're giving them some exposure at their level of text, read to them, talk about them. There's a technique that's a really good technique that I use in the Reading Rocketeers program, where you layer text. So don't just give it them all at once. So you might, for example, read the text to them, get them to visualize. So don't give them the text or anything, just let those words wash over them and let them swim in the head and visualize, because sometimes
create the film in your head. It
is, because some children have what's called a weak visual narrative.
Right.
So a weak visual narrative, we as an adept reader, we can be reading and we make the film as we go and we retain that. Whereas if you've got a weak visual narrative, you might remember what happens at the beginning and you might remember what happens at the end, but what happens it's a bit fuzzy and jumbled, or you can't remember it at all. So if you're asking questions about this middle bit, they're stuck. And you'll find that if children have a weak visual narrative, they'll also have they'll be poor at sequencing.
Wow.
So when you ask them to sequence things, so again, it's been thinking. So once you've read the story to it, just get them to just do a quick sketch. What do you think's happening about that? Right. Okay. Right. Now I'll read it again. Let me. Well, look at that. Here's my picture. How does it compare? What elements have you put in that story? Why have you put that in?
Yeah.
And then introduce the text through layers. So layer the text one sentence at a time, and so you can, and again you can dissect or look at and chat about one strand or one layer. When you introduce the next layer, it's to do with something called working memory. So working memory is almost connected. It has a quite close connection to visualization, but what is for working memory? Well, I'll tell you what it isn't. It's not what did I have for breakfast on Wednesday. It's not that type of memory. It's it's continual while you're reading. So I remember what happens here, and what happens here, and what happens here. So when this happens,
So it's a bit like when you're watching a murder mystery on TV and you make that connection. Oh, yeah. I think it was so and so because this happened.
Yeah, and it's just making those links, link.
Yeah.
So that all you have to remember is links. I always say in my training, links are the most important word you'll learn. The more links that you can make, both internally in the text and beyond, so your experiences, your wider reading, and all that. The better comprehension. You could get rid of all the teachers, get rid of them all, save yourself a fortune, and just say, right, just read loads.
Yeah.
And you'll still develop that. So it's about that. So is layering text helps strengthen, and it allows you to talk about working memory.
Right. Yeah.
Which is what the Reading Rocketeers does. It's just so, and again, it goes back to Sid. Slow it down, so you don't just overface them by giving them loads of text and going back. Can you read this?
Yeah.
You're talking about it. So and as again, it's like when we did with the Wisp. I read it, we talked about it.
Yeah.
Then you get them to read it and that fluency and looking at vocab and looking at that vocab in terms of right. Because vocab's an interesting one. I'm going off tangent.
No, it's all amazing. I'm just
right,
like,
sorry.
I am just so, I'm just like, how do I buy this book?
Yeah,
He's doing. I'm thinking he's so knowledgeable about everything. It's absolutely amazing.
It's
just carry on.
So vocab's interesting because again you're building up that layer and once you've got that text as a whole, then you can think, right, okay, well, let's look at the main theme or the so summative or can just anything, theme, evaluate it as the text as a whole. And obviously, as part of that process, you've got to look at vocabulary. Vocabulary, for me, it's not a skill. It's not a skill, but it is the glue that binds all your skills together.
Right.
So if you think about the different, like the bricks in this wall, if you didn't have mortar in between them, it would be weak, wouldn't it? And push it over. So vocabulary, no matter what process you do in terms of comprehension, has to be part of it. It reduces fluent. If you don't know a word, you're an adept reader. But if I gave you a medical journal, so look at that, So
fear in my
eyes. So straight away you'd be thinking, oh, all that. And it's not just the words and the language; it's the phrasing of that.
Yeah.
So they may have phrasing of words that you do know that's slightly different. You will go back into survival mode. That will reduce your fluency. Yeah. You'll come across a word that you don't know. So what do? You go back to the mechanics of reading to try and break it, to decode it. All that, because you don't know that language, is slowing you down.
Yeah.
Your fluency rate's going slower and slower and slower. And after you get to a certain point with your reading speed, then that will start to have a negative impact on your comprehension.
Yeah.
So vocabulary inextricably linked to fluency.
Yeah.
So if you think of the last SATs paper, why did a lot of people come unstuck with the last SATs paper in 2019? It was because the word count was huge. It was just over 2,100, wasn't it? Almost 2,200. Well, that is so much more than last year's paper was 1,400. That's a massive.
Yeah.
So children were slowing down all the time, and just because of that rate of speed and having to go back to the that's what killed a lot of that test.
Yeah.
Who writes these tests? Do you know what I mean? That's what I want to know. Who writes these tests?
Yeah.
Not educators. No, I'll scrub that one. But it's an interesting one. So fluency, getting them to again, going beyond that simple echo, copy me, but basic, bring comprehension to the fore and get them to understand why they're placing a stress there,
Yeah.
why they pause in there, which brings in your contextualised spag.
You're so right though. I think we forget what we know. So we know certain elements, obviously from experience of teaching and training and things of how to teach reading. But then, like you say, with a medical journal, I've actually thought sometimes when I read something like that, oh, I'm decoding, but I don't think to myself what the sounds are. I just know them.
Yeah.
And I recently went to Serbia. We've been before because my husband's got family there. And last time I went, it was about 6 years ago, and they started trying to teach me the alphabet. And what's really confusing about it is I think the letter P is actually an R, and then basically some of our letters are in there, but they're different to ours.
Yeah.
And so I'll go around Spain, I'll go around Italy, and I can work out what these words are.
Yeah.
You go around Serbia, and it's Cyrillic. It's like Russian. I can't tell what it is, and you feel so confused and so vulnerable because you cannot work unless if it's in Latin, it's because sometimes they do write it in Latin. I'm like, I know what that is because I can read it straight away and I recognise that word, but as soon as I see it written down, I can't read it.
But you've gone back to links, so because that's why English is such a beautiful language and why it's so pervasive throughout the whole world, because they call it a bastard language because it's been colonised, and it's been so we've got Latin based, we've got French we had a French king for 400 years, not the same one, but we just had lots of influences. We were a world empire, so we've taken those influences. It's such a rich language that because we're fluent in English, we can make those connections where it's I love
and even then across the world now, we've still got these extra words in different countries that we all understand as well. Australia, they have different phrases, don't they, in America as well.
That's what makes it so beautiful. Honestly, is when people dumb down or don't give English the right amount of passion, and you just say, but it doesn't sound as good as French, it doesn't sound as good as Spanish. It might not do. But I'll tell you what, Spanish is so easy to learn, and it's nowhere near as good as English. Honestly, I'm telling you, because it's not as rich.
Yeah, we do have a lot of words,
and it's that richness that is, and that's what you put in your writing. That's what makes great writers, isn't it? So.
Yeah. I'm loving this. I'm not gonna ask you all the questions.
No. You ask whatever you want to.
Also, I think you're answering some of the questions, which is great. So you have mentioned intervention. Like, how important do you feel intervention is?
Intervention, it's a funny one really, because I mean a lot of my work is with guided reading, and obviously you do that in lots of different contexts. You do guided reading as a whole class in terms of literacy and the wider curriculum. You might do it in smaller groups, in a carousel way. However you do it, you want to expose them to different things. Interventions are difficult. It's almost like it's a difficult word really sometimes, because it means different things to different people. Same with guided reading. There's a difference between shared reading and guided reading, and it goes back to that speech and language again. So if you're not to do guided reading properly, you need to be a functional, independent reader to be able to access text and read at your level. Yeah. However, if you're not a functional reader, you've not learnt yet to read, or there's some connections in your head that are making it difficult for you to read fluently, and you're not an independent reader, then you don't necessarily do guided reading. You do shared reading, which is again all that we've talked about before, about reading, share, talk, and then getting them to read back, because that's to do with it, that you have to do the mechanics. So it's about help. So reading intervention for me is about that transition, helping children make that transition smoothly from the mechanics of reading to skills-based reading. And what you'll find is children in year 2 and 3, if they struggle with the mechanics or they've got gaps, it's typical, isn't it? In year 3, you get into, if you've taught in year 3, you'll know these children that they're great when it comes to to telling you, great when you're talking about text, but when it comes to reading, difficult.
Yeah.
Really difficult. I remember it was when it was The Beast from the East, and I was up in North Yorkshire somewhere. It was the week after The Beast from the East. And again, I was doing a demonstration where the teachers and the heads and someone from the authority were watching. And it was from the Reading Rocketeers, actually. We were talking about the farm. And so I brought up my wellies. And I said to him, I said, oh, look at this. Do you think I wore my wellies to school today? So they all look out the window, see all the slush and the snow, and like, yeah. But this, it was a year one class, all year one, bog standard, but 2 lads from year 2 who literally had scored nothing. Nothing. I think one of them had even spelt the name wrong.
Right, yeah.
So they were poor, and they were like, what we're going to do with these kids? I'll never forget this lad. He was amazing. The stuff that he contributed to this conversation was outstanding. In fact, for that, he was the only one that said, you've not worn them to school today. I went, have I not? I said, how do you know? He says, because the mud on them there wellies are dry. I said, and your shoes are wet. You've worn your shoes today. That's deductive reasoning.
That's amazing.
That's really good, really good. Your teacher gasped. It's like, but can you see, what was his difficulty?
Decoding it.
Yeah, the mechanics. It wasn't comprehension.
Yeah.
So when you come to define what intervention is, you have to be careful about how is it the mechanics? Is it the comprehension, the understanding? And it's why when I work with schools with EYFS and reception, reception in year 1 really, if you nail shared reading and that looking at conversation, if you nail that, so you're spinning that, you're developing all those skills verbally. They call it, the technical term's called dialogical pedagogy. Right. So dialogue, talk. So dialogical, so you're getting them to think and verbalise their thought processes and why they think that. If you nail that in reception in year 1, it makes that transition dead easy. And it means that there's less gaps. So that's what Reading Rocketeers does. It focuses on trying to get them over that bridge. But dialogical pedagogy is invaluable all the way through. All the way through.
I'm going to ask you a really selfish question now.
Oh,
but
right,
hopefully it'll be good for everybody. So my little girl is starting school nursery next week.
Yeah.
Now I don't know whether they're going to send books home in nursery, but I imagine they are. And obviously they're not going to get her reading straight away. But when she is ready to read, would you then read that book to her first, talk about it for comprehension, and then get her to read it?
Yeah, definitely. 100%.
I'm gonna do
Even
that.
at home.
I'm so excited about that.
Honestly, because even I've had like dyslexic children that the TAs have come up to me, because obviously I work with schools, and then I'll say, right, don't get me, I'll come back in about 6 weeks or whenever, next term, and they'll go, that's one thing. If there's one thing you try, do that. What you don't want to do is just say, go and get your book, right, sit down, I've not read it, because it's from school, it's Oxford Reading Tree, Kipper and everything, and then they've just got it, and then they just read it to you, and there's no conversation there. No. What you want to do is you read it to them, you chat about it, you think, oh, what about this, and then get them, and they might not want to do it every time, but that's definitely a dead simple thing to do.
I'm so looking forward to getting a reading book now,
because it's about those bonds, because she'll remember those,
and sharing the book together,
and again, if it's Oxford Reading Tree or another scheme like that from school, they've been written for the mechanics of reading. So what you might want to do is do that, but then parallel that with a book that you just read to them, that's beyond their reading ability, if you like, so that they are still swimming and being immersed in rich language. Yes. So don't think, don't think Liam can't. I'm just thinking of a lad who was in year 4. Dean in year 4, dyslexic, but great lad, would struggle with the mechanics, but again, so he might go on an intervention program to using text at his level to try and bring him up, but to not allow him to swim in that rich language and those opportunities of being exposed to stories that are, I don't know, like Charlotte's Web or other great texts. Again, he'll tune into language. Yeah. He'll tune into it. And it's that listening element.
Once they get that confidence with the mechanics and they start building on those things, then it's all going to fall into place, isn't it? Because they've carried on with the language and they're going to go like, oh, that's that word. I know that word really well, and now I can read it.
And I'll tell you another one that's good for your daughter. For nursery, actually, is good, but nursery and reception. If a child, remember this number, because I always we do this in Read, Write, Perform, 848. So say that back to me.
848.
848, right.
I like that because it's almost my date of birth.
Oh, is it? All right, good. So if a child can sing, not read and write, just sing,
definitely does that a lot.
8 nursery rhymes.
Yeah.
By the end of the age of 4,
okay,
they'll be more or less guaranteed to be in the upper 2 echelons of reading capability by the time they are 8.
Right. Okay.
Now, it goes back to boys and girls again, doesn't it? I suppose a little bit. Girls talk more.
She talks a lot.
Right, but that's great. That's great because what they do, and they sing. If you when you're learning a language, if you can combine that with music, you'll retain it more. She basically
makes up songs about everything, but I do that. So she just sings everything. She sings everything.
But do you know what they do? But that improves language, and it absolutely embeds something called syntax, which links to grammar, basically. So those children who talk a lot, you think you top readers and you you better writers, they tend to be able to convey and talk. They have better speech and language. They're more emotionally mature
and connected.
Now that's why sometimes girls tend to outperform boys in comprehension at every single step, every single stage up until about A levels. Why? Is it because they're more intelligent than boys? No, it's not. It's because there's lots of reasons, but a couple of key ones are they talk more, and that never leaves you, does it?
Never leaves.
No. So, but because you're talking more, you just engage and chat, and they talk to each other. Whereas, like in the nursery, a lad will pick up a truck and just and they also mature quicker than boys. Emotionally. So even if it's like dressing up, they'll act things out and they'll put their little voices. They'll be into music a lot more than boys. So those 3 things will help that language development. Now that's not to say that you'll never get boys in your top set or in your greater depth. Of course you will, but you think about those boys, and I'll tell you now, they tend to be the boys who are not that the word soft's wrong, but they are
emotionally in tune.
They are because they're your sensitive types. They are your sensitive types because they'll have a good spoken language as well because they can access and interpret text on an emotional level.
Right.
And that's your greater depth. That's your inference.
Wow. Thank you.
So it's not that it's boys, girls, but and we're living in a society where some children have some really tough times, don't we? And they go through a lot of emotion, like Wisp, really, like that. But go back to the book, and that can warp or change the way that or put barriers up to certain emotions.
That so connecting with the emotions.
So again, think of the whole child. Think of the whole child.
So really the key is to, where possible, help them develop their emotional intelligence, really, so that they can access more.
This is an interesting phrase, that, because it's only a personal thing.
No, go on.
But I don't like that phrase because it's about knowledge, intelligence. What do I understand? For me, I think that's why I use emotional dexterity, because it's a two-way connection and it's a bit softer. It's all about empathy.
Yeah,
Do
yeah.
you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
you can I tend to move away from intelligence
also
and
kind of makes it sound like something you can learn and develop as well, instead of just having.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and
I like that.
Yeah, I think so.
I've got so many questions that you've already answered, which is amazing.
Lovely.
So I've got ones about boys and girls. I've got ones about interventions and adult reading. So I'm going to ask you this one. What are the must-have book titles that all teachers should have in their classrooms?
Well, I brought some actually. Apart from reading Rocketeers. No, this one I thought I brought an academic one, because obviously the book, you want stuff that's pedagogically sound.
Yeah.
But when I do my training in schools and when I work with schools, pedagogy is great, but it needs to be practical pedagogy that works. This one is from Teresa Kremin. It works for the Open University.
Okay.
It's about the ethos of reading for pleasure. You can have all the strategies you want, you can have all the interventions in place that you want, but if you don't foster a reading community, then you're on a hide into nothing. So again, that ethos has to be a thread that weaves its way through the curriculum, through your staff, everything. So that is a great book, and I would, if you can, I know they do some reading for pleasure groups. It's free CPD. Contact at Teresa Kremin. I'll give you that information
That'll
later.
be in the show notes anyway.
Brilliant. It's lovely.
So
sometimes, I know we talked a bit before that we said that about choosing books for certain age groups and all that. This book, which is a few years old now, the Fantastic Flying Books of Maurice Lesmore, that is one of those books. Every year, I think you should do, or I tend to encourage schools to try and do a unit of work around one book, and that, but for every class.
Right. Okay.
Now that's a really beautiful topic to do. Usually do it after Christmas, because everyone's had the Christmas pudding and open up the presents, and you come back on January and it's a bit dark and cold. But it just brings the school together. It goes back to Teresa's work on developing a reading community.
Yeah.
So you use one
You're all
book.
reading it together.
Yeah, but what you do is then you present your work to each other. So the work that you do is authentic and purposeful, and it gives you an authentic audience, and it's that sharing again. So that is very much of the read, write, perform philosophy, that you're reading and into a writing approach, and that you're doing that for a purpose. It's an authentic purpose with a real audience. That book, because it's all based on the library, there's lots of access that you can use, and I've seen that work really well in a school for that. And the other book, I've got a few, but the other one, last one, The Tear Thief by Caroline Duffy. I can't tell you how good this book is. It's just beautiful.
I'm totally going to go Google these.
Have you not read that?
I've not read this one.
Well, if you were nearly crying before, I'm telling you. But it's absolutely beautiful, absolutely beautiful. I'll tell you a little story about that. I won't go into too much detail, but I read that, and when I was in year 4 for a year 4 class, and I thought it's all right. I just weren't in the mood. Perhaps I wasn't in the mood for it at that time. And then the year 1 teacher, we used to bring it all together. Every staff meeting, we used to share once every half term, the last staff meeting of the half term. We had to bring a book or two that had blown us away, or a piece of text, could be a poem or what have you. Yeah. And she brought that. So when she started talking, I'm thinking, The Tear Thief. I'm not really.
Yeah.
And she was saying it's the best book she's ever read with a year 1 class. And there's a story behind that I won't go into now, but it made me realise that I need to go home and read that again.
Yeah.
because of her passion and because of what had happened to this child in the class. I read it again with through her eyes.
Yeah.
And I now absolutely love that book. It's one of my favourite books ever. So it's again, do you return to books? That's that conversations you have as a staff.
Yeah.
So yeah, beautiful, absolutely stunning book that. I could be. Don't ask me to do loads of books because honestly, I'll be here all night.
Well, that's really good though, really good. Okay, I'm going to move on to the quickfire because you've given us
that's good.
so much. You've been amazing. Okay, so who was your favourite teacher and why?
Well, do you know what? I didn't have a favourite. Did not have a favourite teacher, but I think that's why. For me, you take a bit from everyone, don't you?
Yeah.
And it's like saying with your family, who's your favourite member of the family? You just take different elements. So each teacher will give you different things, and I love that. And it's why schools are, especially in primary, a community of learning, aren't we? I do remember Mrs. Whittaker though, simply because I remember her story times.
Right. Okay.
I remember reading Charlotte's Web, the Magic Faraway Tree.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah.
Exactly. And I love story time. I just loved it. I was never read to at bedtime, for one reason or another. But story time was special for me. So for that 10-15 minutes, just sitting there and just closing my eyes and listening to those stories, a bit like Jack and Ori in class, I loved that.
Yeah.
Loved it.
I love that. I love when it does link back to what you're doing now as well.
I know. It's interesting,
really
isn't it?
Nice. Very interesting. What do you wish you'd known when you first started out in teaching?
Go back to Sid. I think that was
Yeah.
good. And that the child is more important than the curriculum. I know that sounds a bit soft, but curriculums come and go. Governments come and go. The needs of a child doesn't change, and so to always be mindful of that. I was in a school recently. It was the last. I was in a school recently where I was doing some work about to do some work on vocabulary, and one of the teachers was like, "Oh, I don't like that. I don't like it at all." I was like, "Why don't you like it?" And she's like, "It's too creative," and I'm just like, and my heart sank, and I was like, well, I understand it. It's a year 6 teacher. I can understand why you might think that being creative is not a good thing when you've got that test in front of you. But at the end of the day,
they're only here once.
Exactly. You have one childhood.
Yeah.
You have one childhood, and you want to make sure that you are part of their beautiful memory of childhood. A couple of times, 3 or 4 times actually, that I've gone into a school and one of the teachers come up to me and said, "Do you remember me?" And I'm just like, "It's Lisa. Oh, how are you?" And they were in my class, and the fact that they've grown up and become part of our teaching profession and become teachers themselves, I think that's wonderful. I think that's really, really heartwarming. So I love that. Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay. So, what are the 3 biggest changes you've seen during your time in education?
Well, I think we're going through a big change at the moment, which is nice in a way. When I started in obviously with the literacy hour, a lot of people, I know we don't do that now obviously, but what I liked about the literacy hour was it was book led and text centric. So it focused on text, quality discussion around that text. And then slightly we moved away from that. And now in the last 2 years, we're coming back to the value of text, the value of books, and being a book read. So I think we're going through a second golden age of books. Brilliant. And like I say, it's not just books, but poetry. And there's some great people out there that are just looking at bringing that rich. So that's a good change. I think, obviously, we had Spag. As a writer, that rips the soul out of. Always contextualise. The number of times that you go in and we do 15-minute Spag lesson. We do that, and it will go. It will go. Praise the Lord. But it's not how you learn language.
No.
It's not truly how you. Michael Rosen has some great ideas about how you learn language and all that. Again, it's about talk and expression and sharing stories. Going back to the WISP, that's how you learn languages. That's how you love it, by engaging with language, not by decontextualised one-off, two-off lessons.
Yeah.
So that's my positive and my negative, I suppose.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, where do you think education needs to go in the next 10 years?
I never plan ahead. I never plan for 10 years. It's all about the now, innit, I suppose. I think what goes comes around. There's nothing new.
No, there's nothing
new. No. So I like the fact that we're becoming more... It's all about the child and learning and stuff. It's a difficult one. It's a difficult one for me to answer that, because things change very rapidly, and what is flavour one month is not flavour another. I don't like, personally, to go for trends. I like to go for, look, let's go for what's nourishes the child, and that will stick.
Yeah.
So that again is more child-centric. I love the fact that the term broad and balanced is somehow a new phrase. We were brought up when I was training in the 90s. Broad and balanced was everything.
Yeah.
And I think that's I keep hold of that.
Yeah. Who's your inspiration within education?
Within education, again, it's difficult. I don't tend to have. I like to listen to different people because it's about listening to different voices and working out. Yeah, I like that. You'll never agree with everyone all the time, but you'll always find something within different people. And again, that's what it's about. Life, isn't it? Just sharing and one of the privileges I have in my job, going from school to school and helping them, is that it's not just about me helping them. They actually give me something. So it's such a good thing to have that conversation, because then you can take that to other people.
Yeah.
And so I always try and say, oh, actually, get into contact with this person in this school, because now I might not be there, but you can. That'd be great for you two to talk, because
it's like networking.
It is, but it's like value. It's more valued.
Yeah.
There's a school that wrote to me the last week of before we broke up in summer, and it was a special needs school somewhere down near Nottingham Way, a residential school, so severe autistic spectrum, and I'd given them reading Rocketeers book and just like, look, have a go. See what you think. The email that they wrote back to me, I can't tell you, it was just, I welled up, because it was just to think that they've got access. Some of them are non-verbal. So they even have communicate, which reminded me of the cleft palates and the facial disfigurements and stuff. So it just reminded me of those, but they still got more out of it. And they were doing it in Key Stage 3, some of them, because it was just the emotional connection, which was sometimes there with autistic children, that was there. Not that they're not emotional, but how to convey that. It was just heartwarming. So it was lovely. I learned from them as well. So that's good.
So the children, almost.
Yeah.
And what did you want to be when you grew up?
Teacher and writer. So that's...
And you've done both.
Yeah. Well, that's the beauty of my job now. That's because I'll write a piece of poetry, or I'll write something and think, oh, it's going to be read. And sometimes I'll go into a school and I'll see someone reading something, and I'll think, oh yeah, I remember where I was when I wrote that.
Yeah.
Or I can sit, and I know that on any day, on any school day, there will be hundreds of children reading some of my work.
Yeah.
Not just in Britain either. They're like over the world. So that is a privilege. I love that. I was working on a poem last night, just finishing it off for the final book in the series, and sometimes you sit back and you just think, yeah, that's really good. Really good. I'm dead chuffed. So so that's what I wanted, really.
So that is my questions finished. But You've talked about reading Rocketeers. You've hinted and you've told me loads of stuff in it and made me want to buy it.
Yeah.
But I'm still not clear what it is, so that means
Right.
listeners won't be. Tell me, what is it?
So reading Rocketeers is the first one. Reading Rocketeers it can be used as shared reading in reception and year 1, or as an intervention for year 2, 3 to help them over. And it's basically, it gives them, it tries to develop inference or lots of different skills. You can't just isolate skills really. In a way, skills are like wet paint. You can see them, but they'll bleed into each other. So there will be times like with the 99ers when you might want to focus on a specific skill to plug that gap, but they are multi-skilled, they all work together in harmony to create understanding as a whole. That's what this tries to do. So the main questions are all inference, but it's based on dialogical pedagogy. So it's about getting them to understand through verbalization. So when they do transition and they get to become a functional independent reader, they fly.
So does it have text in this book?
Yeah, all text. So all the texts are in. So it'll have the text. It'll give you can download, after the lesson, you can download extra stuff. So to improve their visualization, their strength, so they get a stronger visual narrative, that chronology. They'll do vocab work. It has a PowerPoint there, so it's all the text is layered for you to strengthen your working memory. And all I can say is, the first book was out last year. Next to, I got hot off the press today, so that's why I was slightly. That was the 12 o'clock delivery, and so, and the last two will be at Christmas. But then, it's just honestly, I'm so excited about this because this is an intervention that engages children. It'll be great. In fact, what I thought was I'll leave 3.
Oh wow!
I'll leave you 3. And then whoever, we can randomly choose 3 people to give them as a little say hello. So you might get book 3 and think, oh, what the other 2 books? But there are also on my website, if you go to the resources section, previews. So there is a free lesson, and you can download. So you try it. But the introduction is also there. So you'll understand the pedagogy behind it.
Yeah, fantastic. So you've self-published them. Can you just get them on your website or to get them somewhere else?
No, you just get them from only from my website really. So just email me, or actually it's better if you just get it from the site, from the resources area.
And we'll make sure that's in the show notes as well, so you've got the exact, because there'll probably be people listening to this in their cars on the way to or back from school, I imagine.
And also read, write, perform with Lee. So we said hello to Lee at the beginning. So I can't, it'd be a miss for me not to mention him at the end.
Lee Parkinson, Mr. PICT, in case you don't know.
So honestly, readwriteperform.com, absolutely. For that's not an intervention, that's for like you're really reading into writing. It goes into performance. We've not really talked much about that, but if you ever come back, we'll look at performance and drama and the emotional stuff and the performance part. But that, I don't know if Lee told you, but Edge Hill are just about to start a study on it because because what was interesting, it was their students were coming back and using the Read, Write, Perform products, and they're like, this is amazing. What is this? So because the school's saying this is having such a good effect, so they're like, right, okay, let's do a research subject on it. So it's nice.
Oh,
it's nice.
Fantastic. Well done. Thank you so much. I feel like I've got so much information, never mind everybody else.
Oh no, it's good.
And I'm so excited to use it. So thank you so much. It's been amazing.
It's Friday afternoon. We need to go to a pub now, don't we?
I
And
know.
celebrate. So it's lovely. I feel exhausted myself, so it's good.
Yeah, and you're starting back on Monday, aren't you?
I'm in Shrewsbury, London, Liverpool, and somewhere else in between. So
all next week.
Fully booked. September every day. I've got half a day. I've got a morning and one morning off on the 26th, which is. But then I'm off.
But that also goes to show just how much you know and how effective what you're doing is. So brilliant.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. It's been lovely.
No, thank you for coming.
Cheers.
Thank you.